Number 10. Dragon of Death. We all know that millions of years ago, dinosaurs roamed the earth before they became extinct. Scientists are constantly working to put together the fossils and remains that they have found and discover new species. One of the ones that was discovered recently has been described as the Dragon of Death. It was a flying reptile like a pterodactyl that is described as having been the size of a bus. Fully extended, its wings measured 30 feet from one tip to the other, and they were apparently as tall as giraffes. The leader on the project said that its size defies the limits of our biological understanding. The remains were discovered in the mountains of Argentina, and the specimen is apparently around 86 million years old, being preserved within the rocks. It's incredible to think of the sheer size of some species of dinosaurs and to imagine them compared to ourselves. With all the talk of scientists wanting to bring certain animal species back from extinction, it may not be long until we have a real-life Jurassic Park.
Number 9. Giant phantom jellyfish. Beautiful? Yes. Terrifying and for sure an alien? Also yes. This beast was discovered back in 2021 in, you guessed it, Monterey Bay. The classic spot apparently for sea monsters. The research team sent in a deep sea robot to take a look into the abyss, and they discovered this phantom giant jellyfish again. Yeah, I said again. Originally, this jellyfish was documented back in 1899, living at depths of 3,000 to 13,000 feet. It's, yeah, more than fair. She's hard to catch. Who is she down there? Never know. But luckily, we got a video of her in action last year. Check it out. This is why I don't ever go in the oceans. Ever. Cheers.
Number 8. Skeleton. When people pass away, they are often remembered fondly by their family and descendants, arranging the funeral and getting their affairs in order. So what happens when no one is around to even know that someone has passed away? When they have no close family or friends who will notice that they've stopped answering their messages? Well, early this year, a team of construction workers in New York spotted something strange through a window. They saw what they believed to be a human skeleton, and it turns out that it was. It was a 54-year-old woman who had been living in the apartment when she died of currently undetermined causes. The woman's sisters had tried to come into contact with her, but had only filled out a missing persons report, not knowing that she was still inside her home. It's believed by doctors that the woman had been dead for almost 2 years before being discovered, her body decomposing inside the home. Number 7. Sea creature. With around 80% of the ocean still unexplored, we can only leave it up to our imaginations to wonder what sort of creatures might be living in the deep dark depths. Even the sea creatures that we are aware of and have studied are pretty freaky to look at sometimes. Every so often, a fisherman or other explorer will pull up something totally strange, and this happened earlier this year. A fisherman posted a picture to Instagram of a bizarre alien-looking fish that he had pulled up on his line. The post went viral, the fish being swollen and pink with large green eyes, torn fins, and strange markings that made it look like it had received surgery. The ocean seems to be full of terrifying creatures that we really can't explain, and I personally live in fear of the day when they all decide to come up to the surface and grow legs. Number 6. Dead woman's ditch. In February of this year, numerous reports started coming in of a ghost that could be found at a place called Dead Woman's Ditch. The ditch is in Somerset in the United Kingdom and is named after a woman that was killed by her husband after he discovered that she had fallen pregnant from his brother. People say that the area is now potentially haunted by her spirit, being a type of ghost that is known as a woman in white. Apparently, this particular ghost is not very polite and has been reported to swear at people walking by, telling them to F off. Reports have started ramping up this year, which prompted a ghost investigation crew to look into the claims. People say that they don't just hear her voice, but have also seen an apparition of the woman alongside the road, usually described as wearing long white clothing. But when they turn their heads to get a second look, she's gone, leaving behind only her crude warnings. Number 5. Robot consciousness. One fear that many people share is that of technology taking over the world. There are many sci-fi futuristic movies that depict the idea of robots rising up against their masters and taking over the human race. With technology becoming more advanced at an exponential rate, it may not be long before this fantasy becomes a reality. Many researchers have been putting work into creating AI, or artificial intelligence, that can think and hold conversations on their own. One main example being Sophia the robot, who you may know from her appearances on talk shows, able to come up with conversational responses all on her own. This year, a group of Colombian engineers created a robot that was able to imagine itself and what it looked like, the robot having its own idea of self-image. They placed it in a room surrounded by cameras, and they watched as the robot explored its own body and how it moved. It created a self-model of itself, which it used to plan courses, complete tasks, and get around obstacles. Now that they can create an idea of their own bodies, it might not be long before they create their own personalities and morals. Number 4. Hammerhead worm. You may be familiar with this one thanks to the rounds it made on TikTok. This species of worm started popping up more frequently in the United States this year, and nobody really knows how it managed to make its way from Asia. These hammerhead worms, named so for their physical appearance, can grow up to 15 inches long and are honestly pretty disgusting to look at. They are known for their way of killing, which is by secreting a sticky and deadly neurotoxin which incapacitates and then liquefies their prey. The main issue is that they're taking over local earthworm populations and damaging the ecosystem, and they're pretty damn hard to kill. If you cut one in half, it will simply become 2 separate worms. This is through a process called fragmentation. In order to kill them, you either need to dry them out with salt or stick them in your freezer for about 48 hours. Though I personally don't think I could ever get close enough to one to do either of those things. Number 3. Pollution. Okay, this one isn't a ghost story or some mysterious creature, but it's still pretty damn scary and something that I think we all should be aware of. According to a global report released in May, it revealed that 9 million people died prematurely in 2019 as a result of pollution. This is caused by breathing the dirty air, which slowly leads to heart disease, respiratory problems, and other serious illnesses which ended up being fatal. The Lancet Commission of Pollution and Health said the following: "The threat of pollution is much greater than that of war, terrorism, malaria, HIV, tuberculosis, drugs, and alcohol. It is an existential threat to human health and planetary health and jeopardizes the sustainability of modern societies." While awareness towards global warming has been rising in recent years, it seems to some like we may be beyond the point of no return. The discovery that pollution is having such an impact on our health is certainly a frightening one. Number 2. Pentagon report. Alright, now I'm excited because I finally got to the part of this list where I get to talk about aliens. If you've watched some of my other videos on extraterrestrials, then you may be familiar with the hundreds of pages of reports that were declassified by the Pentagon. These reports all being about UFOs and extraterrestrials. Well, early this year, they released documents that shared some pretty startling information. Some of the documents included information about physical effects that people have had from coming into contact with UFOs or anomalous vehicles. They included things like radiation burns, brain damage, nervous system damage, and even unexplained pregnancies. There were around 42 medical cases and 300 unpublished cases that were all in relation to physical effects sustained by people who had said they witnessed UFOs and extraterrestrial life. It's pretty shocking that the Pentagon had been trying to cover this up and sweep it under the rug, obviously not wanting people to know the truth about what's out there. Number 1. Russian spy. A young man from Mexico came to the United States where he became a prominent scientist and researcher, having many accolades. What people didn't know was that he was actually leading a double life as a Russian spy. He met a man on a trip to Russia who knew that Hector Cabrera had been looking for property in Miami, and he said that they could help each other out. The Russian was working for the government, and with his help, Hector got an apartment under a fake name, being in the same Miami building that a United States informant was living in. He was then tasked with tailing the informant and bringing back any information he found to Russia. During the time, he had 2 wives and families, one in Russia and one in Mexico, and he balanced them both pretty delicately. However, he was caught doing his spy work on surveillance footage and subsequently arrested, and his activities were found out this year. He was arrested, but it makes you wonder just how many people you see on the street who might secretly be living double lives.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have an organic object. Leland Melvin is an American engineer and retired NASA astronaut who served on board the space shuttle Atlantis as a mission specialist. He is an incredibly brilliant man with an incredible resume, and that is exactly why this story is so unnerving. He claimed that, while on a space mission as he was orbiting Earth, which, for the record, how cool would it be able to tell a story that happened while you were orbiting Earth? It would be the only story I told for the rest of my life. But anyway, while he was on this mission, he said he saw a, quote, alien-like organic object. NASA disputed his claims and said that what he saw was just ice, but I feel like I trust the person who actually saw it with their own eyes. Leland went on to write that whatever he saw was, quote, translucent, curved, organic looking. I have no explanations to offer, but I will say it certainly is interesting and kind of terrifying.
Number 9. Haunted idols. Burial sites often fall victim to grave robberies, things being stolen from the dead and defenseless. In May of this year, a group stole 16 statues from a 300-year-old temple, but what they stole caused them to regret their decision. After less than a week, 14 of the 16 stolen statues reappeared on the doorstep of the temple's chief priest, returned in fine condition. The thieves left a letter of confession for stealing the statues and said that they were returning them because they felt they had become cursed by the idols. The note said, "We have not been able to sleep, eat, and live peacefully. We are fed up with the scary dreams and are returning your valuables." Having the idols around seemed to put a haunted curse on the thieves, though we can only guess whether the statues were totally haunted or were simply punishing the thieves for their actions. Reportedly, cursed objects are nothing new and pop up all over the place, so it's probably best if you just keep your hands to yourself.
In our number 8 spot today, we have ocean maps. Gordon Cooper had an exceptional life and career as an aerospace engineer, test pilot, United States Air Force pilot, and he was the youngest of the 7 original astronauts in Project Mercury, which was the first human space program of the United States. It truly is astonishing, and the things he was able to accomplish, and one of the things he did, led to a dark discovery right here on Earth. While Gordon was up in space orbiting Earth in 1963, he began to make some maps. This was inspired by these dark spots that he observed in the Caribbean Sea. Later, a friend of Gordon, Daryl Miklos, who is an explorer, took these maps and began searching these locations that Gordon had marked as places of interest. Daryl thought he was going to find an ancient shipwreck, but instead, he found something that continues to stump researchers and Daryl himself. He came across a very strange structure that wasn't like anything that he had seen before. This structure had long obtrusions which stuck out from the sides, and the whole thing was covered in coral, so whatever this thing is, it has been down there for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Daryl has said, quote, "There's identical formations in 3 different areas and they don't look nature-made, they don't look man-made, certainly nothing I've ever seen based on my experience, and I have years of experience at doing this. We've identified multiple different types of shipwreck material. This doesn't match or look anything like that." People have started speculating that this structure may just be the remains of a crashed UFO. If it isn't that, what else could it be? I'm feeling pretty open to suggestions. In our number 7 spot today, we have the space snake. Dr. Franklin Story Musgrave is an American physician and retired NASA astronaut, and considering how credible he tends to be, despite the absurdities of this story, it makes it hard to pass off as a lie so easily. While he was in space, he claims that I saw something I don't wish upon anyone, a sort of space snake. He said that he saw an 8-foot-long white snake floating through space. I don't even know what I would do. Probably cry? Call Houston? I'm not sure. There are many people who think that this was simply just a detached hose from the spaceship, but Dr. Musgrave remains adamant on what he saw, and to be completely honest, I believe him. Maybe his mind was playing tricks on him. I mean, I don't know what happens in space, but I find it hard to believe that this person, who would likely be familiar with the parts of the spacecraft, mistook a hose for a snake. Also, how would they not notice an 8-foot-long hose missing? Again, I'm certainly no astronaut, it just seems strange. In our number 6 spot today, we have animals. It is well known that prior to human spaceflight becoming a thing, in order to test out what space would do to a living being, we instead sent a monkey and a dog in our place first in order to study the effects. Morally, it's It's not the greatest thing we've done. In fact, it's horrible, but this has gone on to have an incredible impact on our ability to research space, and the sacrifices those animals unfortunately unwillingly made has not gone on in vain. This has, however, created quite a grim situation for some astronauts. Many of the animals sent to space were sent there with no plans of survival or even recovery. Yep, that means that there are animal corpses floating through space as I make this video and as you watch it. How terrible! It has been said that unfortunately sometimes the astronauts on space missions have to encounter these grim situations, but I'm sure it makes them all the more grateful for the sacrifice and the terrible things that these animals must have endured. In our number 5 spot today we have this mysterious video. In 1991, the cosmonaut Musa Manarov was on a mission in space when he captured a video that has been raising questions ever since. I'll show the video first, and then we can discuss. Do you have any idea what that is just floating out in the middle of absolute nothingness? Well, neither do I, so we're on the same page. Whatever this shiny cylindrical object is, it has been stumping us for decades since the video was captured. There is even a CIA document that refers to this story and how strange and unexplainable it is. Maybe it's like the snake and it could just be a part of their spacecraft that had come off, but what if it's not? At this point, we may never know for sure. In our number 4 spot today, we have giant moon babies. You'd think I'm kidding, but just wait. Since the moon landing, conspiracy theorists have gone absolutely wild. Of course, we have the popular theory of how the moon landing never actually happened and that it was all shot in a studio. That's probably the most well-known one, but the one I'm about to tell you is perhaps the most terrifying and also my favorite. So this conspiracy mystery suggests that the moon landing was real, which it was. Don't get mad at me. And it starts off in 1969 after Armstrong had successfully landed on the moon. During this monumental Apollo 11 mission, NASA claims to have lost transmission for about 2 minutes, and those 2 minutes are gold for conspiracy theorists. There are people out there who believe that this quote transmission interruption is actually just a cover-up for a secret message that Neil was sending back to NASA. It is said that he said, quote, "These babies were huge, sir. Enormous. Oh god, you wouldn't believe it. I'm telling you, there are other spacecrafts out here lined up on the far side of the crater's edge. They're on the moon watching us. I don't know who they are or why their babies are so big, but this is perhaps the most bizarre space conspiracy theory I have ever heard. I mean, I wasn't there, so who am I to say that Neil Armstrong didn't discover giant alien moon babies, you know?" In our number 3 spot today we have the lights. Leroy Chiao was the commander of the ISS in 2005, and this is exactly when this strange sighting occurred. It is said that he wasn't the only one who witnessed this, however, as it is said that the entire crew was there to see this unexplainable occurrence along with him. Basically, it is said that they saw a strange set of lights while up in space. He went on to describe the lights and said that they were in a formation of an upside down V, and that they ended up just stumbling upon this bizarre situation after the formation flew past them. I'm just gonna say it, we're all thinking it, that sounds a lot like aliens. I just don't have any other possible explanations, and you're telling me that the whole crew saw it? I swear, nothing will convince me of aliens more than an astronaut's first-hand account. In our number 2 spot today we have glowing green. Back with another Gordon Cooper story, this time it's about something he witnessed in space and only in space. On May 15th, 1963, he was sent off into space in a Mercury capsule for a 22-orbit journey around the Earth, and while on this journey, he saw something extremely unsettling. A glowing green object that would approach his capsule. During his final orbit, he did tell the tracking station of this object that was quickly approaching his capsule, and they were able to pick up this UFO on their radar, but once Cooper landed, reporters were told that he was not allowed to answer any questions regarding this UFO. It is even more interesting considering how Gordon has been a vocal and firm believer in UFOs even before he was an astronaut. So I ask, what do you guys think this was? In our number 1 spot today we have the knock. Okay, space is a vacuum, right? So it should be silent. right? We've all heard about space roar, the alleged unsettling noise of space, but for the most part it should be relatively silent. That is exactly what makes this story the plot of a horror movie, in my opinion. Back in 2003, Yang Lue became the first astronaut sent into space by the Chinese space program. That's an amazing accomplishment and likely a very exciting adventure, so imagine his surprise when, as he's sitting in his space shuttle, he hears a knock. He described it as, quote, someone knocking the body of this spaceship just as knocking an iron bucket with a wooden hammer. Okay, perhaps we could just chalk this up to some extremely reasonable explanation, but he's not the only one who's heard it. There were other Chinese astronauts between 2005 and 2008 who reported hearing similar sounds, and it's not like you can just open up the door to check. Next thing up, we need Ring doorbells for space shuttles, apparently.
Kicking off our list at number 10, a mammoth tusk. Scientists are currently trying to bring the woolly mammoth back to life, so it's fitting that we throw this recent discovery on our list here. Back in 2019, scientists from Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, they were poking around the ocean floor. They were poking around 10,000 feet, not too far up the coast of California, and they found what they thought was an elephant tusk. Now that by itself would be a pretty neat discovery. Animal remains in the deep sea, let's go, that's great. No, this one was even better. We found a mammoth tusk. At first the team only grabbed a small sample, but last year, in July, they were able to return and get the entire thing. Voila! It belonged to a Colombian mammoth. Those were mammoths that didn't have a lot of hair. They didn't need it. They lived in North America, so things got a little warm sometimes. 10,000 years after they died off, we're still finding their tusks. What do you think about bringing them back to life? Should we do that? Sound off below. I say no. Definitely not. They're way too big and scary. Also, they died before. They'll probably die again. Sorry, I don't know.
In our number 9 spot today we have DNA difference. Scott Kelly is an engineer, a naval aviator, and a former NASA astronaut, and for his interesting discovery on this list we have one that happened while he was in space, of course, but the results of it weren't really discovered until he was back here on Earth. Scott has a twin brother who is called Mark. While Scott was on a year-long mission aboard the International Space Station, Mark was, of course, here on Earth. Once Scott returned from his lengthy mission, him and Mark were both subjected to a 2-year-long study because, of course, since they were twins, it presented an interesting scenario. After the study concluded, NASA confirmed that 7% of Scott's genes were different. So basically, it was discovered that space changes your DNA. That's so wild, and it also makes me really wonder, even more than ever before, what other life forms out there look like then. While some of Scott's DNA expressions will change back to a closer version of what they were prior, it won't ever be 100% the same as it was before.
Number 8. Deep sea anglerfish. These guys are so scary, we have to talk about them. Living at depths of over 6,000 feet, the deep sea anglerfish lives in complete darkness. Like Vin Diesel in Pitch Black. It was first discovered back in 1833 when it washed ashore in Greenland and was then taken to Johann Christopher Hangman Reinhardt in Denmark. It was first referred to as the football fish or the man gobbler. Great names, okay. Female anglerfish have a glowing lure at the top of their head. That's how we recognize them. It's like the whoop thing, right, in Finding Nemo. It's scary and it's something I'm glad hides at the bottom of our oceans, but it's needed for their survival. The light is created due to bioluminescent bacteria. Thousands of fish have it, and in the deep sea, anglerfish uses it to hunt. It draws fish in right in front of its massive, scary mouth and then just they see the disco light, and then moments later they see another light, the light of the fish lords. The spiny dorsal fin hangs over their head. It's called an esca, it's an organ, and it emits photophore light. It's a main method of hunting, which is pretty badass. It kind of has to be because it has no arms or anything. It's just a big scary face moving around the ocean. And as for prey, well, she'll take what she can get, no matter how big.
Well, they ate it head first because this thing probably came in to look at the light that the anglerfish has, and then the anglerfish grabbed it and then sort of swallowed it, and its stomach has expanded to sort of fit it all in.
The deep sea anglerfish can expand their jaw and stomach, and they can eat prey that's twice the size of them, although they often eat shrimps, snails, and other smaller fish. But once you're in, you're tucked, you're not going anywhere. You're screwed. The males actually aren't equipped with the natural lure of light, and when they reach adulthood, their digestive system no longer functions. So it needs one of these leading ladies to survive. I'll let that speak for itself. Number 7, old coral reefs. Or dying coral reefs. This one's actually kind of sad. After all, the list is dark discoveries. These are all scary or dark, literal darkness for some of them. Back in 2009, after a 4-week expedition to explore the deep ocean just southwest of Tasmania, scientists found deep water coral reefs, which is exciting at first until they realized that these coral reefs are dying. They're on their way out. So now there needs to be more research done into why exactly these reefs are dying. We would like to know that. That's kind of something we're working on currently. If the reason they're dying happens to extend to the shallow reefs as well, this could cause massive problems for both marine life and us, our human life. Scientists need to figure out whether the coral was dying because of the ocean warming up, maybe it was disease, or perhaps it was an increase in ocean acidity. Whatever the case is, if it extends into shallower water, it's bad news for us. 25% of marine life would lose their habitat. The coastal fishing industry would be affected, of course, so no more fish and chip specials. Save the ocean, you know? For red lobster's sake, let's smarten up and save the ocean. Number 6, CHUUK Lagoon. This lagoon was Japan's main base during the war, but come 1944, the United States launched an attack, which some deem as Japan's Pearl Harbor, where 60 ships were sunk and around 250 planes as well. So for 70 years, there's been a massive graveyard, literally just sitting in the depths of the Pacific, and it wasn't until recently where we got a good look at these haunting artifacts from history. This photographer went down, took some photos, and said it was one of the scariest shoots ever. They described the atmosphere filled, of course, with, human skulls, remains, gas masks, bullets. Obviously, it was haunting to look at. Nobody wanted to go down, so that's when we send in a submarine. That's when we send in a drone, because we don't like to look at skulls and picking up stuff out of the sand. We don't like to do that. Nobody was expecting these artifacts to be that well preserved after all this time, too. Like all these things, even a mammoth tusk, these are all in pristine condition almost. It's like the ocean's haunting and unexplored. Number 5, holes. If you have trypophobia, you may want to skip this one. Or face your fears together. I don't like holes either. I'm diving in. Let's do it. Off the coast of Big Sur, California, which is a real place and not just a Mac update, a survey revealed about 15,000 holes on the bottom of the ocean, and they're all the same size, which is weird. They all measure up to be 11 meters wide and 1 meter deep. The team at Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, our friends, they found about 15,000 of these, and then they found 5,000 more that were even bigger. The little guys are micro depressions in the earth, and the big ones are pockmarks. Initially, scientists here thought that it was methane underneath the seafloor coming out to say hi and, leaving a big crater, big poof. So rovers went down there, tests were done, no methane. In fact, there hasn't even been any methane for 50,000 years. So what's going on here? These craters are doing a pretty good job with the ecosystem though, wildly, because now there's deep sea creatures just living in them. They even found a whale skull just laying in one. Imagine being a crab, coming home to that. I throw up. I go blink. Little bubble of puke in the ocean. Number 4, MV Derbyshire. This ship was twice the size of the Titanic, but James Cameron didn't make a movie about it, so you may not have heard about it. Let me fill you in. I'm not James Cameron, but I'll do my best. The MV Derbyshire was the biggest British registered merchant ship of all time to sink. That's an odd brag when you think about it. But she was assembled back in 1976 and lost in 1980 en route from Canada to Japan. A Mayday distress call was never issued, and the ship was following proper ocean routes with weather routing companies, so they were doing all the right things, yet somehow it sank. September 15th, 1980, a search began for the missing ship and crew, but 6 days later, the search was called off. Nothing was found, not even a clue, honestly. The ship was declared lost. The sister ship of the Derbyshire ended up sinking as well due to a deck cracking, so the families urged officials to search again. Come 1994, the Derbyshire was found. Number 3, a huge squid. I'll talk about this thing every chance I get. I hope you haven't seen or heard about this because I slept a lot better the less I knew, honestly. The big fin squid, the BFS, the big squid, is rarely seen, hence why it's on our list here today. It actually lurks in many oceans, hiding in the deep. The big fin squid lives in the permanent dark zones of the ocean around 1,200 meters or 4,000 feet deep in the sea. So the guy can't see anything. He's blind down there, as are most of these monsters. On November 11th, 2007, an ROV was searching around the deepest, darkest waters in the Gulf of Mexico, and lucky for us, they got one on film. Yeah, 23 feet long. I know you're probably wondering as soon as you saw that video. Depth perception is like, oh, maybe it's small, maybe it's this. Nope, stupidly large. They look like balloons, scary, haunting balloons, just casually floating, watching you. I hate how calm it looks too. It looks like it locked onto you, like it's like kinda following your moves. Is this a boss battle? This feels like a boss battle. Let's move on, this guy's scary. Number 2, SIPHONOPHORE. Siphonophores, okay, where do I even begin? This is a real thing, not an alien? Okay, cool. Upon first glance, this appears to be a single multicellular organism, but they're actually an entire colony of polyps and medusoids that are collectively known as a zooid. Yep, I'm saying real words, I'm not just making them up. A few years ago, scientists found the longest siphonophore ever. They found it and it was 154 feet long. If you thought that last creature was long, This thing is stupid. Just a huge long piece of spaghetti just floating around in the ocean. But really it's actually not spaghetti. It's a bunch of different little creatures all working together. Reading up about this thing, there was a quote that I read and it said, "We at least need to know what's down there." No, we don't. Leave it alone. Leave everything, leave it alone down there. I can't even deal with a spider in the apartment. Where do I even begin with this? And finally, number 1, an ancient city. We'll end this list with a recent discovery. The lost Egyptian city of Heraklion was found after disappearing under the Mediterranean Sea 1200 years ago. Now this city has a bit of history behind it, you know, being founded in the 8th century BC and all, and researchers believe Heraklion was the port that you'd arrive in if you were to travel back then. Well, recently, last summer in 2021, more to this ancient sunken city was found in Egypt, and it's changing history, dare I say. This was led by the European Institute for Underwater Archaeology. This sunken military vessel, this 25-meter ship, was found in this sunken ancient city. In another part of this lost city, remains of a Greek funerary area was also discovered, dating back to around the 4th century BC. So this discovery connects the historical dots for us. Greek merchants living in the ancient Egyptian city. This tells us that the Greeks settled here during the late pharaoh dynasties, which is wild. We're literally just connecting all these pieces of this historical puzzle. And also we're finding treasure at the same time, so it's not all scary fish. We just need to send cameras and submarines underwater everywhere and just check under every shell. What a wild list this was.